Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You are very welcome to today's Euractiv event supported by ABB. We're going to be talking about how to decarbonise Europe's heavy industry and to balance the climate ambitions with competitiveness. My name's Jennifer Baker. I'll be your moderator today, guiding you through our discussion. We have three excellent speakers for you, and we'll hope to get through as many questions as possible in that time. Now, we all know that heavy industry is an important part of Europe's competitiveness. That's been clear for a long time. However, we are now seeing efforts to decarbonise. We know that is also part of the EU's ambition. And some of these industries are, in fact, those hardest to reduce CO2. So we're going to discuss that. We know from the European Commission side, we had the Green Deal. Now we have the Clean Industrial Deal. And as part of that, the Decarbonisation Accelerator Act. So all of these are acting in the interest of trying to keep those industries competitive while at the same time reducing CO2. We're going to talk about how that might be possible, how to balance it. Since the Draghi report came out last year, competitiveness is, of course, our watchword here in the EU. And according to a recent Fraunhofer IPA report, there are possible ways to get us to the path we want to be on. So we're going to talk about a little bit about that, what should maybe be the goals and how we can work in practice. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to our speakers. We have from the European Parliament, Brigitte van den Berg, Renew MEP and Shadow Rapporteur on the resolution on energy-intensive industries. Dr. Markus Kroll is Head of the Business Division and Circular Economy and Carbon Neutral Production from the Fraunhofer Institute for Manufacturing, Engineering and Automation IPA. He will talk to us a bit more about that report. And Chris Pointer is Division President for Systems Drives at ABB Motion and will guide us through why we're all here today and what the important turning point we're talking about today is. For those of you joining online, you can ask questions in the box on your screen. For those in the room, we will be using Slido. You can scan the QR code that you should see there on the screen or around the room and type your questions in there. I'll be receiving them as we talk to our guests, and we'll try and get them to them as much as possible within the time we have allowed. But first, to set the scene, Brigitte, I'd like to come to you first, our online participant. Tell us a bit about what you're working on. Tell us what you think is important and maybe lay the groundwork for us on how you see the current ecosystem.
Yes, very happy to be here and very happy to do so. Thank you very much for the great introduction. So I'm Brigitte van den Berg. I'm a member of the European Parliament since June, part of the Renew group, and I'm from the Netherlands, and I'm also from the industrial area just next to Amsterdam. So the main employer in our region, I used to be a deputy mayor there, is the steel factory, Tata Steel, India owned. And also it's right next to the harbor, which is going to be one of the harbors that provides the most hydrogen, wind turbines and all those new technologies that we are waiting for. In the parliament, I really want to work on a true industrial strategy, and because this is what I think Europe needs. We need a true industrial strategy that looks at with the knowledge from today, with the techniques from tomorrow, where would we put our energy intensive industries? And where are they most future proof? And we need to look at that from a European perspective, because if we all look at it from a national perspective, we will not make the right strategic choices. Of course, if we are looking at the US and China, they are actually looking at this from this higher perspective. And we as Europe have a hard time doing this. Looking at what Europe is promising now, it's more words than actions. And I think we should really be worried about that, because of course the Clean Industrial Deal gives a future that we want to work to, but it doesn't provide the instruments that we need to actually go there. So what I would want to see is that we really make choices on a European level, on the strategic level, and then work together with the regions to look how the regions can really make that future happen. And this needs to be together with the entrepreneurs, together with a lot of reskilling and upskilling. This is something I'm working on a lot in the EMP committee. But it also really needs a European funding strategy, and that is something that we are lacking right now.
Thank you for raising those points. We'll certainly dive into them in a bit more detail, certainly the need for joined-up thinking. Chris, let me come to you next. Tell us a bit about ABB and why it's important we're having this conversation today.
Yeah, ABB, multinational engineering company focused on electrical engineering, products and services that help our customers be more productive and energy efficient. For us, this whole discussion about decarbonizing industry is critical. We would love to think about the world electrifying everything. This would be a great way for us to continue to be important for our customers. We're focused on two aspects of this. One, not the topic for today, but certainly important for us, energy efficiency. How do we help our customers use the energy that they have today more efficiently? If we would do that, there's massive savings opportunities for emissions and actually for the cost position of a lot of our companies. Decarbonization, the products, the services that we provide, very much focused on helping our customers not only reduce their emissions. I mean, this isn't. I'm not gonna sit here and make a case for lower emissions. I think we all understand what the goal is there, but really looking at how do we provide commercially viable solutions for our customers to make the changes they need to reduce the emissions. And we'll talk a little bit later, I guess, about some of the solutions that we've been exploring and working on in various industries in different parts of the world.
Well, of course, energy efficiency, it's the other side of the same coin, really. Marcus, I mentioned the report at the beginning. Give us a little bit more of an outline, and I'm sure you'll give us detail as we go through our conversation.
Yeah, as Fraunhofer Institute for Manufacturing, Engineering and Automation, we are focused on the industrial side for sure. And we also see that the industrial sector is the backbone of our modern society, providing essential materials for everything from infrastructure to clean energy technologies. However, it's also responsible for almost 30% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. And this is a kind of dual reality. The heavy industry has about more than 20% of these emissions. And the dual reality places immense pressure on the sectors for innovation and adopt sustainable practices. And in our study, we saw that about 107 countries have set emission targets for net zero emissions by 2050. So we are focused on what are the solutions and what are the paths to these solutions and how we could be the journey to decarbonize without losing our competitiveness. So that we saw is we are focused on several solutions which are available and viable today. But we have still to go further. We have to go more progress on innovation in the industry on the one hand side, but we have also to do more research to scale up technologies. And I think another important point from our point of view is that the companies get a certainty for their investments in these technologies.
Well, Chris, let me come back to you on this question of research, emerging technologies. There are existing technologies that do a lot of this work already, aren't there? Can you talk to me about what are the existing and what are the emerging technologies and what role each can play?
Yeah, I mean, we have interesting question on the existing technology. I mean, back to the energy efficiency topic. A lot of work on our part on very efficient industrial motors and the use of variable speed drives with these that dramatically reduce the amount of energy required to run some existing process. These are things that can be installed and used today, and are. I think there's a considerable amount of concern about how much the energy is costing companies. And those are a couple of practical examples of what we have today. What we did with the Fraunhofer Institute, and I think the study that Marcus and his team worked on, was we went through these hard-to-abate industries. We had a bit of a deep dive on what which industries are generating the most emissions, and then we went one step farther. We went into what applications are really responsible for a lot of the high emissions that are being generated by these companies. And then I think together we went through the exercise of looking at how we might update these and remove fossil fuel-based applications from many of the industries. One of the areas we looked at was industrial heat. I mean, that's one of the big takeaways from this, was that the energy used in industry to generate heat, and we're talking probably 55%, I think was where we ended up, of all of the energy consumed in industry is used to generate heat. Big number. Most of that heat is generated with fossil fuel. So we're talking, gas, oil, whatever. These can be electrified. These can be run with electric heat instead of gas. But they are, we've talked about this, higher powered applications that are usually applied to industry. So we're looking at new ways to take some conventional solutions for electric heat into higher power ratings. We're doing this today. I think there's some great examples with we have a pulp mill in Norway that converted from oil to electric, saved about 30% on their energy bill, and reduced their carbon emissions by about 14,000 tons a year. There are something like 5,000 pulp mills around the world that could do the same thing. Test driving these applications, finding ways to innovate there, that's the kind of thing that we're working on as we focus in on these very specific applications that we see for electric heat.
I am going to come back to you on the cost savings thing in a bit. We'll talk about return on investment when it comes to these upgrades. Brigitte, let me come back to you, because we're talking a little bit now about specific examples of technology. But of course, when we look to EU legislation, it's all very much technology neutral is the watchword. What are your thoughts on whether that's achievable, or do we need to prescribe certain things?
Well, I think to be technology neutral is very important, but of course you never know what you don't know. So before the technology is invented, you don't know how to regulate it in a neutral way. So we have to strike some kind of balance. So at the one hand, we should, I think, support specific technologies that we know that are going to be future-proof. I mean, if we think of like hydrogen, electrical cars, all those, we have to just set straight goals for that and make sure that we can also build the big infrastructure that is needed for those technologies, because we need so much time for that we just need to get working on that. But on the other hand, let's make sure that where there are more insecurities, that we leave the decisions to the market a little bit more. Or maybe to the member states, if they are really pioneering on some things, let's make space for that. For example, I'm thinking then of nuclear energy, where developments are so fast and politically it's so sensitive that one member state wants to go in a very different pace than the other, and I think we should make space for that. We should really see if EU regulations then are restricting new and cleaner technologies, like for example with low carbon building materials, and the construction product regulation, but also waste regulation. Those things are really now tempering innovation. I think that can never be the right way to go. So let's strike a balance and both bet on technologies that we already believe in, but really leave an open space for those that want to go a step faster, both market and member states.
Marcus, what Brigitte is talking about is different, if you like, strategies to best reduce the carbon emissions in European industry. Have you come with any conclusion of whether it's best to have policy-driven change or market-driven change? I mean, is the market doing enough on its own?
I think it's a kind of both. So just to follow Brigitte is what really important is to very open-minded for new technologies. On the one hand side, in the politics, because we have to invent, we just know what we know today, not what we know in the future. That's a kind of research to get more information on technology, to scale up technologies, to develop technologies to another stage, to another level. So that's quite important also for the industry, not just to get away of one technology, even to look what is especially for the usage of my individual company necessary. And there are just a lot of possibilities today, and there's also, I guess, a very good perspective for the future. We are developing in the research of this technology. One of this, which is very important, is hydrogen. For example, everybody's talking about, but we are still on the path. We are at the beginning of the development, how we could produce green hydrogen. We are not in the end. Meanwhile, we could set up for other technologies, transition technologies like using biomass, for example, on the way to go later on to hydrogen. So on the one hand side, it's of course to see what are the possibilities. And on the other hand side, you have always to look as I'm also aware of 20 years of automotive industry. I know about economics. And you have always to look, what is the economic way?
Chris, let me ask you, I mean, we've touched on the questions of renewables. I mean, will they be able to do all the heavy lifting for us? What is the sort of the share that which we can rely on renewables, and where do we still need to do additional work?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing our own investments in hydrogen production, green hydrogen production, and we're seeing the same things. The the challenges with this industry growing, this emerging industry growing, is a lot more about who's using it than who can make it. Technology's there to do stuff. We need to figure out who's using it, and I think some of the applications that need to be evolved to use hydrogen and some other things in heavy industry are this is where the investment is going to take place. Look, I think from our side the topic of what industries and what applications we're going to be focusing on. I mean, there is a world of opportunity out here for us with higher and higher powered applications that we want to start working with. I think that's an area that we've identified. We need to figure out how we're going to get there.
Brigitte, to bring you back in, I mean, we're talking. We were talking a little bit about what might be the, if you like, legislative instruments. I mean, what is your view if we say, is it carrot versus stick? I mean, that's very simplistic, but talk me through your thoughts.
No, but that's fair. I think that in the last minute, we have set the goals, which was essential to really show where we need to go. But also, and we've put out quite some sticks. And it might be time for some carrots these days. We have to, especially in these geopolitical circumstances, it has to be that we also look at Europe first. I did not imagine a few years ago that I would say this, because we so want to be an open market, but this is the times we're living in. And then, if we have to do de-risking to make the step for the heavy industries possible. So if we can guarantee that Europe will buy from Europe, if we can do something about long energy contracts, if we can do something about public procurement, those instruments we really need to put on the table to make sure that that industries that want to make the step feel that they can. Because if it just keeps being the case that there's no business case, then in the end we will lose our industries, and that is really a scenario that we can't go for. The result of our goal setting that I'm very much supportive of from our last mandate cannot be that we lose our industries. So it's really a time that we step in with with a more balanced approach of carrot and stick.
Well, this is Chris and Marcus. I want you to tell me, I mean, in terms of the goals that we have set, are they the right ones in your opinion, Marcus?
Well, what I mentioned before is just to scale up technologies, which also means to lower prices for technologies over the time. That's quite important to our competitiveness for the industry, and that we are focused on. The other thing which Chris mentioned before is to get aware of energy efficiency. It's a very important thing, just to save energy and have more electrical energy, for example, to substitute technologies for electrification. That's one thing I guess is important, and also to focus on material efficiency for substitutes. If we look deeper into the heavy industry, for example, it's especially, or for example, for the cement industry, it's also a thing just for to focus on material substitute. Digital transformation, everybody's talking about AI, for example, and AI or other digital technologies are very good finding new solutions for material compositions.
Yes, great.
To that one, I love the carrot and stick topic. I think you ask about goals. I wouldn't hesitate to say the goals are appropriate. I mean, there's no question. This is where we need to go. The sticks, Europe might be a little bigger on sticks than some other parts of the world, but you know, this is a foundational thing. I think this looks like a reasonable place to start. The carrots are a challenge. I think one of the real barriers to us moving forward with a lot of things is, well, I'd say there's two things. One is the capital cost of conversion. How does existing industry decarbonize by investing in new technology that doesn't necessarily dramatically change the amount of product they're producing? So the conversion of existing industrial infrastructure to either more efficient or carbon-free technologies is a really big deal. The interesting thing we're finding now with some of these early installations is that the operating costs go down. We're seeing once people have done these conversions, we're starting to see some early indications that there's lower operating costs. Depends what your electricity costs and whether you can get some. We're seeing some interesting feedback now on improved efficiency. So productivity in some of these processes with the ability to regulate, temperatures easier, faster, better. Imagine somebody investing in something that gives them lower operating costs, more efficiency, more productivity, all great stuff. But if they can't get past that initial hurdle with the capital they need to make that conversion, then it's never going to happen. So I think some carrots along those lines might not be the worst thing in the world.
I mean, in some of what you say, I mean, and certainly lower energy costs is something can be seen quite quickly, but overall productivity and efficiency, return on investment can take time to show. I mean, it takes a little bit of medium to long-term planning for this sort of investment. Now, I know the industries I think that you were looking at in the report was cement, chemical, mining, oil and gas. Can you tell me whether there's any role there where public procurement can be used as a lever, Marcus?
I guess which is important is to have a plan for each sector and each industry. Every company is special, but as we shown in our white paper, you can have an idea, and we show different paths how you can do the electrification. We have, you can set up, for example, mining. We are always talking about electro cars in the way, but if you know that mining, and it says our white paper, has up to more than 50% of fuel consumption, fossil fuel consumption, and a lot is transport in mining, with hauling, for example, and you can switch over to electrification in the heavy vehicles as well, on the one hand side, or change technologies, for example, to belt conveyors, which could be powered by variable speed drives, for example. And there you can go to more electrification and put down the energy consumption in total. And so you can save emissions quite easy. And so for every sector, it's important to have a plan and to show which technologies you can use to reduce your carbon footprint. And once more, I would to add is important, if you do the investments for a company, is that the investments are protected for a longer time. You can do all the investments several times. That's also important. That's in my point of view, that also the government and the regulation sees that we couldn't change every time, not to have a zigzag course.
Well, I mean, you mentioned de-risking. I know it's a bit of a buzzword in Brussels at the moment, specifically after that Mario Draghi report that I mentioned, but it is absolutely key for stimulating investment. Brigitte, you mentioned public procurement. To really get some bang for your buck, as the Americans would say, on that, there does need to be a little bit of joined up thinking. I mean, I think Marcus mentioned 107 different countries with different plans. How can we sort of bring things together so that there is actually genuine attractiveness to be responsible when it comes to lowering carbon emissions in this, quite hard to abate heavy industry?
Yeah, it is really not easy when it comes to public procurement because we need to make the processes as simple as possible. This is really something if you want to do something collectively, you have to make sure that everybody gains from it a little bit or has the feeling that it's possible to gain something from it. And this is, I think we've made the processes too complicated for now. So we need to make him, we need to really simplify that. We have recently adopted some new procedures on public procurement in the committee status of the parliament. So I hope that these new proposals will actually make a difference. And of course, it's also working on the new mindset that we need as Europe. We need to understand that we are in this together in a more in an unsafer world where we need to really stick together as Europe. And I think that the more and more different governments, also on a local, regional, and national level, are realizing this, the more they are willing to put in the stakes collectively. And I do think that, so this combination of making the process simpler and having the right mindset that is necessary for now, I think we could actually achieve something when it comes to public procurement.
Well, the simplification question now, Chris, has come up. I mean, we mentioned, I think, in the past here at your active debates, the omnibus and so on. Obviously, I imagine from an industry side, simplification of corporate reporting, this sort of, if it helps and is working towards streamlining, is welcome. But I presume we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, there's interesting concept. Look, I think the policies, how we're driving corporate decisions or how we're helping stimulate, some companies into making these decisions is important. I also think that, EU is actually helping in some. I don't want to make it all sound negative because, we're involved in a program right now called Electra. 17 companies working together sponsored by the Horizon project from the EU. So I mean, there are things going on where industry and a lot of stakeholders in industry are being brought together and provided the opportunity to go out and innovate in some ways that are going to help us change industry overall. So, you know, I think there's you know, incentives, you know, support for capital projects that are going to, you know, move the needle on somebody's long-term emissions. Finding ways to allow companies maybe to benefit somehow from making these investments long-term, you know, while they recover some of their gains on energy savings and these kind of things. But I think really supporting practical, tangible collaboration in innovation across a number of focused industries, and I'll go back to, you know, this. Really tight focus we ended up with after we went deep on a number of these industries and applications. So, you know, I think these are the things we'd like to see move forward a little bit.
Brigitte, I want to come back to you on this question of fostering innovation. I mean, a lot of it is focused on resources, you know, very specific financial resources which can be supported like through the Horizon programme. But I mean, are there other ways in which the EU really could be pulling its weight in helping to foster innovation?
Yeah, I think I come back to what my remarks on my introduction. We need a real European strategy. For example, now we are depending on state aid measures from member states, and this is really not something we should favor. I think that incumbent producers, we will give the choices to the wrong level. We should ensure that the production sites of the future are located strategically, and that we will not have that permanent competitive disadvantage because we are holding on to the places where they have started, and that we actually make the choice of that the richest member states decide which industry is aided by their member state. This will really not work. And I think a good example of how we as Europe did this in the right way is actually the hydrogen bank. When we did that auction, then that way we used market mechanisms to really make innovation happen in a market-based way and in a fair way, and then you get the production on the right place. And if we could support that those industrial ecosystem more, then we make sure that the current industries do not have to leave. I think this is this is a way we should really explore more, and but that actually requires more power on a European level, more strategic strategy on a European level, and I think that will be something that the Decarbonisation Accelerator Act. That's where we should really find out these instruments, because the products that Europe has delivered now are giving a way, but not the instruments. And this is really something that should be the next step for Europe.
I will remind the audience, both online and here in the room, that you can use Slido to put your questions to our speakers. Don't forget to do that. I see a couple coming in, but do get your questions in so that we don't run out of time to put them to our guests. Marcus, I'm going to come back to you because I'd like to get your insight from the studies you've done onto the different industries. Who's ahead, who's behind? I mean, not that I'm presenting it as a race, but, you know, is there something that one could learn, lessons learned or best practices from one industry to another?
For sure. I don't know if there's one before, one behind it. It's finally, it's always very individual from each company to each company. And there are some companies which are really busy with new technologies. One example from the cement industry is from Germany. It's Heidelberg Materials. They opened just a couple of days or weeks ago a new plant in Breviken in Norway. And they combined their not a complete carbon neutral production, but they reduced the carbon footprint by 50%, using, for example, waste heat for liquefying carbon dioxide and to use CCS technology, also which is means storage technology. And they put it 2,600 meters under the seabed, even deeper than gas fields are. And that's one of this very heavy industry which has a very high challenge to reduce the carbon footprint. And this, I guess it's at least transition technology to do so. And you see they are busy, they are aware of that, they do something. But I guess these are easier for large companies. So a special challenge is always for small mid-sized enterprises because they often don't have the own research and to do so, but they could more come back to organizations like us to help them to find the right solution to support them. And what I also suggest is for a lot of companies to get more into contact with pilot projects just to test out some scenarios, test out technologies and participate, for example, at demonstrators or something like that.
Well, you mentioned CCS, carbon capture and storage, and of course it's carbon capture and usage and storage now. So, I mean, that can even go towards making the business or the economic case as well. Brigitte, let me come back to you and focus a little bit on the questions of a just transition. I know I've mentioned a lot of times making the business case, making the return on investment, but the just transition encompasses everybody. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yes, I was happy to, because if it comes to this European strategy, we really, and we have found out in which regions are going to go which way, then the question is, how do we make sure that those regions really have the instruments to make those steps to a cleaner future? And I think that the instrument that the European Union last mandate developed, the Just Transition Fund, was really something that we should work on because as was just said, especially SMEs have a hard time to actually find the research and find the tools to go on this innovation. But with that Just Transition Fund, we were able to target especially the regions that are going to have the largest transition to make. And we very much stimulated the interaction between education, government and SMEs, and also and get to that place where, okay, new companies are starting, the skills, getting the reskilling is provided by the educational part of the system. And this really, creates more than you can think of from a European perspective, because in the region, those mechanisms are really attracting more innovation, more partners to work together with. So I think that, if we adopt a European strategy through those kind of auction systems, then we should really follow up with an innovation fund that is based on the mechanisms that were also implemented when it came to the Just Transition Fund, because that would really make sure that you work from a regional perspective and that you also involve the people that really have to do it. But for example, also the housing element of it, because we really, if there's one thing that we should take away from the Draghi report, it's that we have to create innovative ecosystems, and that is something that that I think the member states can provide if only if Europe adopts a strategy that pushes them in that direction.
Chris, I'd like to get your reaction to what extent you agree with Brigitte. I mean, I know that you strongly feel that sort of industry has a place at the table, but that does involve working with all those other stakeholders as well.
I don't mind the other stakeholders involved. I think there's a lot of pull from a lot of directions. I mean, industry industry covers a lot of ground. I mean, it strikes this, gives you this picture of big steel mills and oil refineries and cement plants and things. But all of those products go somewhere. Construction materials go into houses, cement goes into infrastructure, steel goes into infrastructure, steel goes into transportation. So we're talking about, I think, Riggy, as she mentioned, ecosystem. I mean, this is the ecosystem around a lot of it. I think the pull from the end use, the construction and transportation, these kind of things, needs to be there. There needs to be a desire to use products that have been, manufactured in plants that are, energy efficient and as green as we could possibly make them. But I think it, as I said about the hydrogen.
How do we stimulate the sufficient demand, and indeed more demand for these sorts of green products? Marcus, I mean, any insight into, are we doing enough? Are the industries you've been talking to in part of your report saying that there's enough demand out there? Is that one of the questions?
Depending from the view of sustainable, we have to do much more, I guess. But I also know about the economic side, and a lot of companies and enterprises are still busy with their operative business. And which is also a big point is all the reporting stuff, sustainability reporting stuff, which binds resources of the companies, for example, and is also to get or to harmonize reporting stuff to get more resources on the transformation itself. So reporting makes a kind of transparency for everything. That's good and that's fine, but it's not so harmonized. We have CSRD, we have EU taxonomy. Nowadays, it comes along the digital product path, which is also a kind of reporting finally. And it wins a lot of capacity within the capacities and a lot of investments and money to implement this stuff. If you would change a little bit to harmonize just to one complete reporting, just to use the same information, and not report different formats and different KPIs, for example, we could more focus on the transformation itself. And the companies have more capacity and just money for the transformation, and to put it more into the transformation, to set up technologies, to go more into the road mapping for themselves instead of only the reporting stuff. And I think that would help a lot the industry just to focus on the transformation. But also, I believe that each enterprise should more focus on an transformation roadmap, to look into their investments and to put the investments in a long-term business plan.
Well, Arne Koppel online has asked the question, what role do you think the CBAM can play, and how should that be designed to really help heavy industry? Brigitte, any thoughts on that? I mean, it's obviously part of the mix.
Exactly. I think we really need to protect Europe for a little bit to make sure that we can make our own transition, because we really don't want to lose our industry in the process, and that is where CBAM has a vital role. But of course, CBAM is not developed fully yet. Like it has too many holes to go around, and that is something that cannot be acceptable for us. So we have to work on that to make sure that it can really play a protecting role. But in the end, Europe has to be competitive on a green level, because in the end that has to be we have to stand on our own feet again. So yeah, we need that. We need the development for the future years to make sure that our industry has the time to make the change. And I think that that CBAM plays a vital role to protect our industries in that.
Chris, well, this question is actually for the whole panel, but I'll start with your thoughts. Ines van Leerde is asking about your views on the level of the energy price in Europe, the highest in the world. Decarbonising but being uncompetitive does not help, says Ines. I see Gerard Dubois is also asking, how do we facilitate a single industrial market and sufficient financing in light of the, say, mentioning Chinese overcapacity. So I think both of those sort of referring to Europe's place in the world, and I did want to talk about that as well. So what are your thoughts in general, either on the energy price specifically, but how Europe competes with other regions?
Yeah, I don't know how to manage or comment on the energy prices. I mean, I come from Canada, and we have a different view of electricity prices than maybe some people in Europe. I think just to some of the comments earlier, that Europe 25 years ago, and I've been working in heavy industries for my whole career. 5 years ago, I would have said Europe had the best technology, the most innovative production facilities. I mean, there was no question that when you looked other places, China, India, United States, you were looking at Europe as the benchmark for modern innovative technology application. I wouldn't say that's the case right now. Energy efficiency, investments, green investments, green steel production, green whatever, energy storage, carbon capture. I mean, these things are happening in different parts of the world, probably at a rate that I see maybe a little higher than they are in Europe. I think there's some catching up to do here, and then you get back to the topic of if you're going to make those investments to be productive, to be green, and to be competitive, where's all that money going to come from, and who's going to make the investment? So I think there's that question. I wish I had the. Firmly believe that there is a long-term productivity and for companies who choose to invest. How you make that decision, how you get past the first hurdle, really seems to be a challenge for a lot of industries. We've been talking for some time about the fact that many of these solutions are available today. This isn't rocket science. There's a few rocket science things in our future as well, but this is not rocket science. There are things we could do tomorrow morning if we chose to invest that would make us more productive and alleviate some of these topics of energy prices.
Brigitte, same question to you. I mean, just to reflect on Europe's position, if you like, on the global ranking leaderboard.
Well, I think that our main problem is, of course, that we are our energy problem, and that the one thing that we should really do is make sure that we become one energy union. That is something that would really help Europe forward. And of course, the Affordable Energy Action Plan that presented right now is a step in the right way, but it does not address the fundamental issues that we have with the governance of an energy union. Like it leaves a lot of room for an uneven playing field within Europe, and that is something that that with that the member states are allowing that we are not having those developments on the European grids that we want, for example. Like those every discussion I'm in when it comes to getting this done and getting more and more to all the things that Draghi advised us to do, it's all the time about the expensive energy and the lack of grids. And well, I think this is something that I really hope that that is going to change in the very near future. That member states that are now still in their way blocking the construction of the interconnection of the energy grids, that is really going to change, and that's something we really need to fix as a Europe. And if that fixes it, if energy becomes cheaper, then it's so much easier for our entrepreneurs to invest. so yeah, we really need to work on getting that electricity market directive done, for example. That would be my main takeaway.
I mean, one of the questions we often ask ourselves when we talk about Europe vis-a-vis the rest of the world, one of the words that comes up a lot is resilience. Now, when we look at this sort of ecosystem, Marcus, I mean, a lot of these sectors that we're looking at have supply chains that reach far beyond EU borders. Is that something that is top of mind that you're hearing when it comes to focusing on decarbonisation? Are there questions about, where are my suppliers coming from?
For sure, we have also to look on the total ecosystem, not only on special points of it, because we want not single optimization, we want a total optimization and a good mix of everything. That's so I think we have also to look on more or less solutions for sector coupling, for example, to have an overall optimization. And we could look, there are several possibilities and interdependence we have to take in consideration. But also what you ask is logistics. The less we have to transport, the more savings we have. So it's also important to think about regional production and also of transport. As I mentioned before, within the mining industry, that you have to do more with electricity, because we are actually still dreaming a little bit about that. We have all of our electrical power from renewable energy. We don't have it yet, but we are on the way to do so. So it's two parallel paths, in my opinion. The one thing is to electrify the chain, and on the other hand, to work hard on renewable energy, which is not only meant by solar power or wind power. It's also biomass, hydrogen. We call it biosynergetic process, to go more the way. For example, if we have projects with old wood and we are producing from the waste of old wood hydrogen and maybe also carbon dioxide for CCS technologies. And what would be a really good step is just to get more research on negative carbon footprint technologies and emissions, that we can really build something out of this carbon dioxide waste, we call it.
Chris, Piotr Wodak would like to know your thoughts and your expectations in terms of the upcoming Industrial Decarbonisation Accelerator Act, or possibly even your hopes as well.
Yeah, not an expert. I'll know more probably later today. We've got a couple of discussions going on here today. Look, I think the intent to stimulate and accelerate decarbonisation resonates with us. I mean, this is music we'd like to hear. I'm hoping that it is something that allows all of the stakeholders to engage here. I mean, the operators and the factories and these, if we're driving for sustainable products, then great. If there is support for the companies like ours to work with our peers to find ways to move some of these technologies forward at a pace that we're unlikely to do without some help, then absolutely. So I'll leave that one there.
A couple more questions, Brigitte, I'm going to put to you, but feel free anybody else to jump in. Alexandra Turderu-Lakovice is asking, how do we ensure security of energy supply for European industries. Should we not diversify clean energy sources, mentioning on-site green electricity, heat pumps, etc., rather than just promote electrification? Maurits Dolmans is also saying, you mentioned nuclear and industrial heat was mentioned. EU-based companies work on advanced nuclear, including cheap at scale, clean, secure. What can the EU do to help, like simplifying regulation and helping finance? I'm bunching those together, Brigitte, for you in order to give you a chance to comment on as much as possible.
Yeah, thank you very much, and great questions also, because I think that diversifying is going to be key, because it's the most realistic approach in this in the times that we are living in. So yes, greenify electricity. Of course, we know that that's going to be that we have to put our bets on that in any case. But rest heat is definitely a huge market that we need to find out, and there is so much infrastructure for that needed that we really need to get working on that. But yes, also the earlier mentioned nuclear, I think we should really also have a more realistic approach to that, as far as the different member states are willing to go, and also give each other a little bit of space in that development, because sometimes in that political discussion it's more than a discussion about technologies, than there are other arguments involved, and in that we have to respect each other's political situations, I think. But yes, diversifying is very interesting, or is most important. Especially, I want to come back to the resilience question you asked it earlier. This is something we were conscious about way too late, and we are now recently really looking around, like, how can we as Europe stand in this unsafer world? Well, then diversifying is essential. A realistic approach is essential, and this is something we haven't been conscious about enough in recent times, and we have given away strategic assets in an too unconscious way, and we really need to grab back our position as Europe, and that's therefore we need a strong energy union that is really open to different technologies. I think our way of legislating should not be in the way of getting new technologies on board. We should really have an open mind, because the future is too insecure to think that we already know our paths.
I think we hear that time and again, that when it comes to resilience, we can't put all our eggs in one basket. It's about having a safe base. Jamie Fernando Morelas has a question for you, Marcus, on sustainability reporting. Very specific question, so feel free to talk broadly around the subject. Asking, the CSRD and the ESRS were meant to harmonise EU sustainability reporting. Do you feel that in the only financial year they were operational, 24-25, they helped achieve this harmonisation?
The harmonization is also very complicated stuff, because it starts from different views, and but it seems to be that every stakeholder makes his own reporting, something like that, and there should be, or it would be much easier for everybody to focus on a harmonized reporting. I know that's not that easy as it's said here, but it will help the industry to focus on. On the other hand side, what can help is more standardization, for example, and usage of digital platforms who uses the same data and can make a kind of automated reporting. That is also maybe also kind of transition possibility before we get a harmonized reporting. I know it takes time. Nowadays we want to strip down the requirements on CSRD reporting which has about 1,200 data points. If you and only 600 or 700 are relevant for the enterprises. And on the other hand side, if you add it all the time, for example, if you know the actual battery path from the EU, it has 107 data points. And it's also putting together, and it's totally so much. I don't know exactly how much has EU taxonomy, but it's so much, and everything has been done. And if we can combine and say, okay, we can use the first step, for example, could be to say, what are common data points? Just why should I report same things in different styles or different formats? It doesn't make sense. But you could look at data points to get them harmonized and really to look which are important and which are not. It's still necessary to have the data for transparency and to get the right thing. What are the right measurements I have to take from my point of view of company, for sure. But not doing all the time this reporting stuff.
I mean, Chris, it all comes down to data at the end of the day when you have to make this business case, because obviously within industry, within particular companies, they need to know where they're getting their return on their investment and where things can be improved. I mean, is there overlap between gathering all this data for metrics, for KPIs, that could be simplified to help with all this burden, if you like, of reporting that we see imposed by legislation? And is there an understanding, if you like, by policymakers that European competitiveness depends on the competitiveness of individual companies?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't go into a lot of detail about that, but I mean, the feedback that I've had is those things are somewhat disconnected. You know, how we operate and how we report for some of this would probably, as you say, some harmonization might be. And then the question is, you know, what information is important, what is needed, and what's nice to have. And I think some of the nice to have, there are other mechanisms to probably acquire some of the nice to have stuff is for a lot of the, you know, our company and another, you know, and our industrial peers, if you like.
Brigitte, Francesco Lombardi has a question back to you on CBAM again, asking, what would CBAM need to fix in order to fit the purpose, in your opinion, and do you see it as protectionist measures only?
Well, I think that, of course, the CBAM, the idea is that we make sure that also that we all that all companies have to have the same requirements when it comes to cost of CO2. And as we now have only arranged it for products that are in their first phase, so like a roll of steel, but it's not arranged for something like a car, for example. So it has a very big incentive to actually bring half products into Europe that that are way harder to put through the CBAM rules. So this makes it easy for carbon leakage to happen. So so that is something we really need to fix to make this system actually work. Otherwise, yeah, we actually stimulate industries to leave Europe, and that is something that's actually we want. CBAM is designed to actually make sure that companies within Europe can actually compete.
Right, well, a final quite broad audience question to all panelists from Korea from Korea Brussels. Ecosystems are seen as an efficient way for some hard-to-abate industries to become self-efficient. How can the EU support these ecosystems with a regulatory framework? I think that's what we would all like to know. Marcus, I'll start with you and then I'll come to the other speakers. Have you a general suggestion on this?
The general suggestion is that, for example, we need the right framework conditions for on the one hand side, do by the politics to support companies on the one hand side, and on the other hand side, to do the right research stuff to get applicable, viable technologies into usage, and the companies should look for the special solutions for their roadmaps, which can do. And what I mentioned before, it's important just to protect the investments for a long term, and not if there's a technology change that you force companies to change their investments immediately. It's not possible. So that my suggestion is just to set up this the right frameworks to have turn uncertainty most into a secure way, into a protection way for companies, and to give research and further technologies and to scale up technologies for viability.
Chris, same question. Have any idea what this sort of right framework should look like, or indeed any examples of what's working already that could be replicated?
Yeah, look, I mean, regulatory sounds like a brick stick. I'm not. I think, as was said earlier, I think these things need to be fair. They need to be consistently applied. Spending our life trying to figure out where there might be a little hole is maybe a little too much. But I think the fair and consistent is appropriate. And if you're trying to ensure that we keep this supply chain overall as much in Europe and regional as you can, I think that's reasonable. The other side of that is some form of stimulus, and I don't know quite what form that takes. I mentioned a couple of times getting people past that initial capex hurdle is important. How we would reward companies long term for some of these actions, I think would be something else to consider, because as we've said, the benefits are long term. I mean, heavy industry. These large investments in heavy industry are not 2 or 3 year life cycles. I mean, they're 20 and 30 year life cycles, and I think that's where companies should be. Somehow, I think we need to find some ways to help these guys benefit from their, the investment over time.
Wait, before I come to Birgit, just to follow up on that, I mean, how do you help companies overcome the fear that this capex costs are prohibitive?
You do it every day.
I was going to say, we, from our side, they want lower prices for everything, that's a wonderful discussion, and for us, there's another challenge there with supply chains as well. We are, we're not a European-based company per se, but we have a lot of assets in Europe. Staying competitive when there are overcapacities in different parts of the world where this material and these technologies are not inferior, and they do the job, and they are quite competitive. I mean, we need to find a way to compete there. There needs to be some form of incentive, stimulus, whatever. I mean, if we're gonna convince companies to make these steps, telling them they will pay penalties if they don't, okay, that's great. They'll be sitting around lobbying for relief for some time. But I don't know. It's going to have to be a balance. I mean, the carrot and stick thing is something that really needs to be thought through, because too much stick and not enough carrot's not going to do the job for us.
That's a good point. Brigitte, sort of same wrapping up question, if you like, to you, about how the EU could enhance support for industrial ecosystems, perhaps particularly in regions where the industries might be leaving. You said that you're from Amsterdam. Talk us through what you see happening.
So if I look at this discussion in panel, we've covered a lot of topics that have, of course, an impact on this. I mean, of course, affordable energy, of course, de-risking and creating demand, of course, making procedures easier, cutting red tape. But I want to put something on the table that we haven't mentioned enough yet, I think, and that is investing in people. Because if it's what it's really about in an ecosystem is also so it's the union of skills, actually, that the EU put on the table. I think that is something that we are mentioning not enough in this regard, because we need people to get reskilled and upskilled for all these new technologies. But it's also an understanding of how important vocationally trained people are, for example. I am always very surprised that in Europe we have created a lot of unity, but we have not created unity when it comes to the recognition of diplomas of vocational training, for example. We have not arranged that it's in Europe all the same. While if we really want to make sure that people can work wherever they want and like invest in those regions where it really has to happen, we need to make sure that there are the people, like the smart hands, the green brains that really need to make the change. And yeah, so I really want to, in this wrap up, emphasize that the union of skills is one of the procedures that we really have to put a lot of emphasis is, because, well, this is what we see in any innovation that happens around the world. It's in the end the people that find each other and that have the freedom to come up with new ideas and really work on the process.
So is that your key takeaway as we wrap up? Key skills for the specific case of the Green Industrial Deal? Okay, thank you very much. Marcus, I'm going to ask you for a wrap up, a takeaway. Obviously, tell people to go and read your report, tell the policies to make it go and read your report. But anything else you want people to bear in mind as we wrap up?
Just so that companies have to take the chance for the transformation, use the technologies today available and get their business plans and long-term roadmaps to this. And on the other hand side, to the politics to set up the right conditions, the right frameworks to go further, maybe thinking about not only to have penalty systems like carbon dioxide prices, instead to turn it maybe more into a reward system, maybe to reduce taxes if you do so. And yeah, it's just just let it do and just to get proceed and accelerate. Yeah.
And Chris, a key takeaway from you that you'd like people to think about as they leave?
Yeah, I think to Marcus's point, the technology to move on this is not some futuristic dream. There's a world of things available today that we could move on immediately. The energy efficiency topic is huge, and I think the first stages of decarbonization. I think we're already seeing some really interesting investments, commercially viable investments there. So let's work with what we have. Second part of my, I guess, request is. That there remains support for not just the incentives that we're talking about here, but the to stimulate collaboration across the various stakeholders in a lot of these industries to allow us to do what we're doing with this Electra program, which is 18 companies and right through the value chain, working on trying to find ways to enable these new solutions and make them viable and scalable in the industries that are extremely hard to abate right now.
I suppose at least it is heartening that this is already top of mind here in Brussels and presumably across the EU. 2050 may seem a long way off, but I guess we need to start acting sooner rather than later. Thank you very much to all our speakers, to the gentlemen here in the room, and thank you to you for joining online. Thank you also to our audience in person and online for joining us today for this Euractiv debate supported by ABB. If you've got further questions or you want to stay with us on social media, please use the hashtag #EADebates. This won't be the last we've heard on this subject, I'm sure, but it's the last for today, so have a great day.